talking about the networking game in your elevator pitch, right? So an elevator pitch is something that's really unique because it's very brief, it's very concise, and it's very important. If you don't have an elevator pitch already, you've probably already thought through what you would say to someone in a networking situation, or you've gone to an SPE event before, you've conferenced, you've been out for drinks with friends and they've asked you, what do you do for a living? Well, that's basically the start of figuring out your elevator pitch, right? It's something that you think through. You have to really wrap your head around what you do, what it is that you do, how would you explain that to someone, and why is it even important, right? There's always this aspect of an elevator pitch that has to do with, so what, right? Because you have to hold someone's attention. And that's why I always say that an elevator pitch can only be no more than 30 seconds. You'll see this in a lot of advice if you read columns or things like that. The 30-second elevator pitch is kind of like it's a thing that a lot of people will talk about, and it's super important, especially right now since we're in kind of a pandemic-induced remote situation for all of us. And whenever we get on webinars and Zoom, we have very limited time to approach people and to really make an impact. So a good way to do that is to have a very brief elevator pitch, where if you were doing a roundtable, going around the room or going around the Zoom, that you'd be able to use this pitch to really catch people's attention and to say, oh, wow, well, they wrap that up pretty nicely. Now I know what they're all about, right? So let's get into it. Okay, so hello, I'm Dr. Rico. I specialize in resume building, editing, and career solutions for senior and executive level professionals. I have 13 years of experience ranging from generating materials for TEDx speakers and healthcare executives to optimizing profiles for EMP managers. I'm a Houston Business Journal columnist, a featured speaker for professional development, lectures, seminars, and I've worked alongside public officials, career diplomats, and corporate executives such as CEO of Halliburton, Jeff Miller, former CEO of GE, Jeff Immelt, Houston Mayor, Sylvester Turner, Ambassador Kay Bailey Hutchinson, Chevron EMP President, Jeff Schellberger, and Department of State diplomat, Julie Kavanaugh. That's my pitch. I don't know if that was 30 seconds, but I'm hoping you can already see how a pitch functions, right? So most of the time, whenever I will use my pitch, I use it across the board for everything. I use it on my website. I use it on my LinkedIn. I use it in emails. I use it everywhere, right? So the majority of the time, I won't necessarily include the names. So the bulleted or check-marked names that you see below here, I might just mention, yeah, I worked with Sylvester, Mayor Turner, or yeah, I've worked with CEO blah, 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 or whatever. But that's something that I'll incorporate based off of the situation that I'm in. But I'm hoping you can already see the gist of what these 3 bullet points are doing in terms of creating an effective 30-second elevator pitch. And I think that it's, kind of helpful to see it broken down into 3 different bullet points so that it's less mystified, right? It's not as mysterious in terms of thinking through, okay, how do I come up with this pitch? Okay, so, oops. No, there we go. All right, welcome to my masterclass. All right, so it's a vital networking tool to have an elevator pitch. Okay, so we want to consider a few things. We want your audience to be in your mind. You need to keep your audience very, very broad. Okay, so think about talking to your grandma at Christmas dinners. If grandma were to ask you, what do you do for a living? How would you answer her, right? How would you answer a CEO that you wanted a job from, right? These are 2 very different ends of the spectrum, but they're important to keep in mind whenever you're creating your elevator pitch, because you should make sure that the wording that you use, the phrasing, is very, very direct and very specific to a certain audience, right? So the medium that you use is also very important. And by medium, I mean, are you writing this for an email? Are you writing this for a LinkedIn post? Are you writing this for a connection invite on LinkedIn, right? What are you using this for? Okay, so you can use longer and shorter sections of your pitch for a wide variety of situations. Kind of like I just mentioned, where most of the time I won't do the check-marked list of people that I work with, but in certain situations I might, because it might be more impressive to mention those types of names to people based off of the person that I'm talking to. Or I might just kind of weave them in there in a way that isn't quite so direct based off the person. You know, so for today, we're going to get some key takeaways for optimizing your networking opportunities, especially for, you know, during COVID-19 right now. And I'm really trying to think through how we can break this down for you so that you can get some really actionable tips for creating something that will be helpful remote-wise. Just gonna click it. All right. So there are 3 main steps to breaking down how to create the perfect pitch. And I like to break it down to basics, right? I mean, the background in teaching and taught English and rhetoric for God knows how many years. So it's always helpful to break it down to 3 steps, which is what I do with most of my posts and my videos anyway. You know, that way we're not having to be confused about, all right, so I see that you did this thing, but how did you do that? So we're going to break it down to 3 main points. Okay, there are 3 main steps, and we're going to start at the top. So big picture, right? Think about the big picture, the bird's eye view of you, okay? Your career, what do you do, right? That can be very broad in terms of, you know, your background. And all of this is going to depend on your audience, right? So what you want to include. For me, I sell services. So I want to include something that has to do with, you know, a non-kitschy sales pitch kind of thing. For you, it's going to be different. You know, as a geologist, you're going to want to think about what you do in a way that sets you apart, but also in a way that's approachable and that allows people to see that you have value that you can bring, not only in terms of a job, but also just in terms of networking and staying connected to other people, because it's, trust me, it's those people that are going to find you a job. So, you know, having friends makes all the difference, honestly. So the second step will be narrowing it down, right? So if we're think of, I don't want to say pyramid scheme, but think about this as, you know, kind of like that inverse triangle, right? So we're thinking big picture, and then we're narrowing. So one of the most important parts about rhetoric in terms of writing something is your audience. You have to keep in mind who you're writing this for. Who is your audience? Okay, so remember that with a networking pitch, you're going to have a very broad audience. So you could be talking to someone who knows nothing about what you do, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they won't be a valuable networking asset for you, right? So maybe someone who is in directional drilling, you know, may not know what a geosteerer does. I mean, I hope they do, but they may not know exactly what you do. Make sure to break down the language that you use. Don't use acronyms, okay? Avoid using acronyms. I see this a lot whenever I build resumes. There are a lot of times where the original resume that I receive has so many acronyms that, you know, I work in oil and gas. 95% of my clients are oil and gas, and I still don't know what those things are. You know, what is RTA? What is MCF? I don't know what this means. No one else will either. So make sure that you're breaking down those acronyms into something that everyone will understand. Don't assume that people understand, you know, distinctions between, you know, even if they're a geophysicist and you're just, you know, someone who does more general geology, make sure that you're keeping in mind, maybe they don't know what this term is. So, you know, if they, at the very least, someone will tell you, yeah, I know what that is. In that case, you're, okay, cool, awesome, moving on, right? No harm done. Right, so make sure your terms are understandable to a wide range of people in different careers. You know, especially if you're networking and you're trying to get out of the industry, really keep this in mind. This is true for a lot of people I'm talking with right now. Most of the people that I chat with or that I work with are having me build, you know, 2 different resumes, one for oil and gas and one for outside. So if this is the case with you, it's especially important to make sure that your terms, phrasing, jargon is very, very tailored to a broad audience. Because again, that pitch is something that's either going to hold someone's attention or you're going to lose their attention. So make sure that it's, you know, specific enough, but also broad enough for someone to understand. And one thing I always suggest, you know, just in terms of best practices, always try out your pitch on friends. I can remember when I was transitioning out of academia, and I was actually talking to Samaya about this just a little bit ago. I would ask him to, you know, invite me along to networking events in oil and gas. This was like, you know, 11, 12 years ago. But I'd ask him to bring me along, even though I was so uncomfortable because I didn't know the industry. And then after, we would always talk about, okay, so how did you think I did in terms of like engaging people in your industry? What terms was I using that made sense to them? Did I lose them? Did I lose their attention? And many times be like, yeah, you lost their attention. Because you're using words like deconstructed and, you know, stuff that nobody knew outside of my specialization. So, you know, remember that things, you know, inside your industry, outside your industry, try it out on people, okay? Even if you're shy, even if you're like, no, it's fine, really try it. Because I guarantee there are gonna be some things that you think make sense that they will tell you don't make sense. Okay, so just in terms of a best practice, don't just try it on your colleagues. They're gonna know what you're talking about. Okay, why 30 seconds, right? This is kind of common sense, but I always like to include it because sometimes it's like, why can't I talk for longer? I mean, if I'm networking, you know, this is because, especially right now, if we're not in person, people have less and less time to be sitting in on a Zoom, or, you know, whenever you're going around the room, you have less time to explain yourself. So your audience has limited time, very limited understanding of who you are, and honestly, very limited interest, okay? Most people like talking about themselves, but they don't like listening to other people. We're just talking about basic psychology. It's the truth. Most people have very little interest in staying on target and on task when it comes to you talking, unless you're bringing some really insane value that they can't miss. It's important to remember that people want to actually ignore you. So that's where trying out that pitch, making sure that your pitch is extremely tight, very direct. That's where it's going to be effective. It's most effective to keep those things in mind so that you're not just assuming, oh, it'll be fine. It's fine, right? So definitely that 30 seconds requires that quick, easy to understand snapshot. Yeah, so thinking of it as a snapshot, right? Just like, click, this is who I am. You know, use keywords that anyone can pick up on. Anyone can pick up on. And that's not even just thinking through inside or outside your industry. Think of cultural terms like anyone would use. If you're using something like drilling rig, some people may not even know what that means. I mean, honestly, it can be hard when you're so in your industry that you know what that means, but really try to break it down. You know, a work site. Work site is a really good description that's applicable across all industries and isn't necessarily only targeted to oil and gas, right? Using rig site, they're like, okay, I'm thinking of those things that go up and down. Is that what a rig site is? And then you're going to derail your elevator pitch. Trust me, because people will interrupt you in the middle of your pitch and ask you, wait, is that this thing or what is that? And then you've lost them. You've lost them. Like at that point, they're going to start focusing on what they don't know rather than what you bring to the table and the value that you bring, right? So our goal is to make sure that they're zoned in for that 30 seconds so that you don't lose them. How long is 30 seconds? How long is that, right? So, I mean, at the very beginning when I did, you know, my pitch or whatever you want to call it, it's that very brief, you know, roughly concise sentences and paragraphs. You know, that's why I like using those 3 bullet points, because that is roughly 30 seconds. You know, as long as you break it down to no more than, I'd say a sentence or two for each of the bullet points. You'll be right on 30 seconds. When in doubt, trim it down. Trim it down. You know, I've been editing for a long time. This is not an easy task, guys. It's not easy to edit, but it's necessary. Creating this elevator pitch might seem like, yeah, I'll just add tons of information. I'll trim it down later. Do it immediately. Trim it down as soon as possible, because when you look at all that content, you're going to get overwhelmed with thinking about, well, what words can I cut? They're all important. All the terms that I use are vital. Otherwise, they're not going to know what I'm talking about. No, trust me, they will. You just have to think of shorter phrases, shorter terms that describe what you want to get across, right? So it's important to think through that, you know, and do that as, you know, spend the time on it. You know, spend the time on each of those bullets, you know, just breaking it down. Think of your audience as a 5-year-old. I like using this. I have a 5-year-old, so if I can't hold her attention, it's not going to hold someone else's attention. And, you know, you're trying to hold their attention for as long as possible without being overbearing. You want them to like you, right? It's just like a 5-year-old. You want them to like you. You want them to be listening to what you have to say. You don't want them to cross the street. You're telling them not to, right? So think of that audience as that 5-year-old and really try to hold their attention in with, you know, your facial expressions, how you engage them, not only just with words, but also with bodily movements, right? How you are, how you engage someone. Don't just stand there and be like, well, this is what I do, and blah, 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 blah. Right? Be very, you know, be emotive. I mean, be yourself, but also try to be very personable and approachable in how you're describing what you do, because that's going to give someone the best idea of, again, your value. All of this is about selling yourself, right? You're very much in the vein of selling yourself whenever you are doing a 30-second pitch. And that will lead someone into wanting to know you more. They'll want to ask you more questions about yourself. That's the sign your pitch worked, is if someone wants to know more about you, right? Okay, so remember, you'll be using this in multiple situations. So you'll use it at networking events, through email, through LinkedIn. So, you know, like I'll talk about in a little bit, you'll want to have different, you know, kind of a template. I usually just pull up a Word document and just put in basically templates for different situations, for different platforms. And then you can just copy and paste when you need to. You don't have to rethink it or worry about it again. Have it all done, all right? Okay. All right, so step one, the big picture. Okay, again, we're thinking of that. That's a heart. We're thinking of that inverse triangle, right? We're in here and then we're going down to the specifics. So the bird's eye view of you, your career, and what you do. Okay, so think of how I introduced myself today. Okay, say it. So, hello, I'm Dr. Rico. Think about just that. Hello, I'm Dr. Rico. I didn't describe myself as Amanda, right? I describe myself as Dr. Rico. And what that does is it tells people that I have a level of expertise that invites people to trust me, that I know what I'm talking about, I know what I'm doing. Okay, so Jason, you should do this too. You know, when you describe yourself in a way that immediately gets people to think, okay, this person knows what they're talking about. That's the best thing that you can do, just in one snapshot, in one sentence. You know, so that's really, that's a good way to think through initially. If you have that higher level education, really use that to your advantage. So I specialize in resume writing, editing, and career solutions for senior and executive level professionals. Okay, so I specialize in, right now I'm responsible for, I specialize in, or I am an expert in XYZ. Okay, and again, I love using the rule of threes, because threes, it's like a visual snapshot for people when you use threes. They can handle threes, right? You want people to remember this. So if you use threes, people will be like, oh, okay, so they do this, this, and this. If you go on beyond 3, people will not remember it. Trust me, they won't remember. So keep it to 3 or less. You know, if there's just one thing that you specialize in, you can use one, you can use two, but I would always suggest not going beyond three. Okay, so let's think of those terms: resume writing, editing, and career solutions. Okay, so resume writing is one thing, editing is one thing, and career solutions is a totally different thing. And I'm thinking about this in terms of you geologists, because you guys will typically do multiple things as well. Many of you, some of you are in office exclusively. Some of you are in the field doing operations. Some of you are doing geosteering exclusively, all sorts of different things. So think about those three different competencies that you have that are really unique, that set you apart, but that also invite people to be like, oh, I do that too. Or, oh, okay, I kind of know what that is. Can you explain more, right? Okay, so the step one breakdown, right? So introduce yourself like you would in a normal conversation. Okay, so admittedly, I may not go up to someone and say, hi, Dr. Rico. that's more of a LinkedIn email kind of thing. Or me as, being someone who is selling services or something like that. So of course you might introduce yourself by your first name. So in that case, I might say, hi, I'm Amanda. I have my doctorate in, English, and I specialize in XYZ, right? So you just kind of shift it to, think through what are the most important aspects of what you do and what you bring to the table, right? So break down what you do from a bird's eye view. Okay, right, so like I just explained, the rule of threes. Okay, so for a geologist, this could be, I specialize in data analytics, geosteering, and field operations solutions. Okay, very simple, very quick, but someone's gonna pick up on, okay, field. Okay, so they're in the field. They're not just in the office. Okay, so that makes them unique because they're doing X, Y, Z. Okay, I can talk to them about that because I do drilling operations, right? Data analytics. Okay, well, what kind of software are you competent in? Right, so always think through how the wheels are turning for your audience, what they might connect with, right? So something like data analytics, that's specialist, right? That can be kind of niche, and that actually shows that you have a really unique specialization that not a lot of people can do. And this is actually a big way that I've been helping clients transition out of, out of oil and gas, is by thinking through those transferable skills. Something like data analysis is something that's transferable, right? So again, be thinking of the terms and the things that you do for multiple audiences. If this person is someone in tech and you do data analytics, we'll invite them to ask the question, oh, well, what kind of data analytics? Do you do big data? What type of software do you use, right? So always be thinking through how that other person, could connect to you. All right, step two. Okay, so now we're narrowing it down. We're in the middle of the inverse triangle. Okay, so how do you do what you do? What value do you offer, and who do you serve? Okay, and I like to, for oil and gas people, not just who, but what, right? Because you could be serving multinational operators or something like that. Right? Okay, so again, my introduction today. The bolded part for senior and executive level professionals. Okay, so these are the people that I serve. What I'm doing here is that I'm showing that I have a niche, right? That I have something specific that I do. I offer value to X group of people, right? Right, so going back to your audience, who is this tailored for? What is your niche? Consider your title. What level are you at? Are you senior level? Are you mid? Are you entry? If you're at the intern stage, you might want to describe yourself a little differently. You might want to keep things open instead of being so niche down, because you never know when that next opportunity is going to come up for you to maybe pivot, maybe shift to a different type of geology, or geology position. So be thinking through kind of where you want to be, but also where you're at, right? Where am I at? Okay, who or what are you aiming for? Do you want a promotion? Want a promotion? Then you definitely need to step up your game in terms of that 30-second networking pitch. You need to make sure that things that you're describing are really at a level, when I say something like, look at the pitch down here, I specialize in data analytics, geosteering, and field operations solutions, who works with or is interested in working with multinational E&P operators. Okay, so including the term multinational or Fortune 500 is a really, really good way for you to show that you're at a senior level, okay? That you are someone who is at the forefront of doing big things. And just including just one term, right? Just Fortune 500 or multinational, people immediately get that entrepreneurial, kind of forward-thinking, advanced mindset from you, from just the terms that you're using. Okay, so, and again, if you're looking to shift industries, using multinational is also a good thing, right? I mean, how global are we in oil and gas, or if you're in Houston, or, really anywhere with Zoom and with all this stuff, we're all kind of in this global space right now where you can talk to anyone from anywhere. So step 3, now we're at the bottom of the pyramid. Okay, so tightening it up. Why does it matter? Okay, so this is probably, honestly, I think this is the most important part of the pitch, because this is where they've either started ignoring you. At this point, if you get to bullet 3 and they're still looking at you, awesome, you've succeeded. If they've walked away, they're crap, right? Right, so what sets you apart? Why does it matter? Again, thinking through the value that you bring. What do you bring to the table? Okay, so make your audience care. Not only care, but remember you. Okay, and this is, again, like I mentioned, body language is huge in this. But, being engaged, being very, assertive but professional in how you approach, when you talk about yourself, right? Like showing that you have confidence, showing that you know your stuff, right? Okay, so consider adding some of the following details to this portion. So years of experience, right? Like I list 13 plus years of experience, right? And I like the plus. Some people, my husband hates it when I had the plus. So some people, you may have people that don't like that, others that do. Again, that would be specific to email, probably a written medium. LinkedIn, you're not going to talk to someone in networking. You're going to be like, I have 13 plus years. No, don't do that. Okay, so I've been doing this for 13 years. That suffices, right? That's enough. Your niche specializations, right? So something that really makes you unique. Publications that show that you're a thought leader. So even just saying I have 9 SPE publications, right? That's a really great way to showcase that you're a thought leader. And of course, 9 SPE publications in what, right? Hydraulic fracturing, or, what are you doing? Nodule analysis. All of these things show, again, how someone can connect to you and how you show value. Okay, big names or projects. This is huge. This is the reason why I say that I've worked with Mayor Turner, right? It's because big names sell. Whether it's something that you did in collaboration with someone, or whether you worked with them directly, doesn't matter. If you were with them, if you worked alongside, if you were, invested in a portion of that, you did the work. So don't sell yourself short. I see this all the time with people who, whenever I rewrite their resumes, they're like, well, it's not, I don't know that I want to say that. It doesn't make me look like a team player. And I'm like, you are a team player. Everyone knows you're a team player, right? And we have shown throughout your resume that you're a hands-on leader, but a little self-promotion goes a long way, because people won't know it unless you tell them. They won't know it, right? So unless you get that across, unless you tell them, this is the value I bring, they will not know it. And you don't want somebody picking up on that 2 years later after you've already networked with them and they think they know what you do and what you are. No, tell them right off the bat, this is it. This is, these are the things that set me apart, right? Or projects, right? If I recently worked with someone who was like the leader in hydraulic fracturing in Permian Basin. She drilled, some of the first wells there. That's huge. If you have a patent, say that, right? Say what it's in. These are all things that you don't want somebody finding out later and they passed you up because they didn't realize you had all this experience or all these specializations. You know, it's the same idea with higher level credentials. I see it all the time with people that bury their MBA at the very bottom of their resume. So, you know, as I'm rebuilding their resume, I get to the third page and I see they have the MBA. Recruiters and HR managers, they're not going to scour your resume for that stuff. That MS, that MBA, that PhD, that needs to go right next to your name, right? Same thing with your elevator pitch. They need to know that you have this degree, that you have this certification, right? So just really important things to keep in mind. And of course, you can tweak that based off your comfort level. If you're not comfortable with saying that you have 7 different certifications and, you know, and naming them all, you can just say, you know, I have extensive certifications in X, right? Whatever that may be, right? In data analytics. And then someone will be like, wow, 7. Well, what are they, right? Remember that the pitch is made so that someone will ask you follow-up questions. That is the goal of the pitch. If someone asks you follow-up questions, you have succeeded. So, you know, don't think that you have to necessarily shove everything in there and be as descriptive as possible. Just say things that will get their attention. Use data, right? I'm sure that throughout this presentation, you've been hearing all the numbers that I throw out, right? 13 years, right? You know, I don't know what else, but I've been using them. I've been using data. So that you can actually hear the credentials that you have, the experience that you have in those numbers that show, rather than just tell people your experience. Right, so step 3 breakdown. Right, okay, so this is a longer portion, just because, like I said, it's kind of the most important portion. You know, the 13 years of experience ranging from generating materials for TEDx speakers and healthcare executives. Okay, so if I specialize in working with senior to executive level people, I better show that I've worked with some, right? So TEDx, huge catchphrase, huge, right? Someone sees TEDx, they're gonna write big name, big project, right? Healthcare executives, I don't only work in oil and gas. This is what I'm trying to get across here, right? Say about 90 to 95% of my clients are in oil and gas, but I do have some I work with that are outside oil and gas. So I want to show the breadth of my experience. I want to show the breadth of what I have to offer, right? Optimizing profiles for E&P managers, but I do work in oil and gas, right? So this shows that I'm specialized, but also broad enough to work with you, right? Whatever you may do, I can do it, right? I specialize in these things. And this is something that you can do as you're creating your elevator pitch, thinking through, okay, what are the broader things that I do and what are the more specialized things that I do, right? Houston Business Journal columnist. Again, a lot of this is name dropping, right? So if you had a huge project in the Permian Basin, if you work with unconventional horizontal wells, how many, where, right? All these things are going to really, they're going to be name dropping things that people will pay attention to. And they'll say, oh, wow, really? So you've done that, right? How deep have been the wells that you've done, right? Do you work in high pressure, high temperature? All these things add specializations that show that you can do tough work, okay? And that you put in a lot of work to be a specialist in that, okay? Right, featured speaker, public speaking, right? So again, we're just showing a wide, kind of a holistic look at me as a professional and what I bring to the table. Okay, and then of course, just blatant name dropping, right? Just unabashed, blatant name dropping, just to get attention. Because again, at this point, someone has lost attention, right? Someone has tuned out of what you've said. Assume that the last portion, someone's checked out, okay? So by saying CEO, you know, mayor, right? This is pulling them back in. This is saying, you know, oh, wow, okay. she's done this. Okay, and again, visually, if you're working in LinkedIn or email, the check marks, the bullet points, visually, those break up that visual interest, and they're so, so, so important to use. Please do not use block paragraph. Do not put your entire pitch into one paragraph. I guarantee no one will read it. Okay, break it up. Remember, we live in the world of just quick, 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 quick. You gotta keep moving. And so the more that you can visually break up your content, the better. Okay. All right, so wrapping it up. Use that 3-bullet method to break down your own pitch, right? Think of that, the 3 steps, the inverted triangle, right? It helps you focus, and it walks you through the 3 different stages so that you don't necessarily get lost in your own thoughts. Practice, practice, practice. Please take time to practice this. Trust me, you will get tripped up plenty of times. There were so many times I had so many drafts of this. It was ridiculous. I tried it out so many times, and I just saw what worked and what didn't. Okay, your first draft probably won't be perfect, but that's why practicing it and trying it on friends outside of your industry is going to be so important. Get someone on the phone, get someone on a Zoom, talk to your hairdresser. I don't know. Anyone that will give you feedback on your pitch, because the more that you get feedback from people from a wide variety of industries, the better you'll know that it works or it doesn't work. And then you can tighten it up. You can be like, well, what part of it lost your attention, right? And if they're honest with you, then they'll be like, well, it was actually this part, because I just don't know what that is. So, and like 90% of the time, that's what someone's going to tell you. I don't know what that is. That's why they tuned out. So again, using those terms that everyone can connect to in some way. Most people know what analyzing is. Most people know what data is, right? Things like that. So thinking through those terms for a wide variety of audiences. And creating that template, please save yourself some time. You can just have one running document with all of your different drafts. Just plop them all in there, and put the one that works best at the top of the document. You can have 2 main versions of your pitch for LinkedIn and for email. This is really, really important to have, because whenever you connect with people on LinkedIn, if you're connecting with them through that customized invite, you're only going to get 300 characters. That's it. So you don't want to waste them. So you want to make sure that you're trimming down your pitch to be as concise as possible. And even with the connection invite, I guess I'll just switch to the next, right? Word on networking. You can switch to that. LinkedIn being the most important platform for you, you must spend time on LinkedIn. You have to. Not going to mess around with it. You have to. If you don't, you're seriously, you're limiting yourself. So, spending 15 to 30 minutes per day, reaching out to new people and engaging, is extremely important. You have to build that into your time. Also be very blunt. Again, if you don't, chances are you won't find a job. You have to be getting on LinkedIn. Join relevant groups, customize your searches to find people. One thing that I always suggest, that's kind of low-hanging fruit, is your university affiliation. So go on that LinkedIn search, go to the advanced search. So don't just click on people or whatever, just go to the advanced function, find your industry. They have oil and energy, I think, is the industry. Click on oil and energy and click on the university you're affiliated with. So for me, being with the University of Oklahoma and A&M, I have so many people. If you're an Aggie, if you're UT, if you're, anywhere really, LSU, wherever you're from, that is going to be low-hanging fruit for you to connect with people and to network, because the second that they hear that you're a Tiger or you're a Sooner or you're an Aggie, they're immediately going to be like, oh, well, I have a connection to them. Yeah, of course I'll connect with you. We're in the same industry and we both went to the same school. If you just try to go willy-nilly and connect with people, even if they're in your industry, chances are people will not be as willing to connect with you. So you have to find that common ground so that you're not wasting your time, right? Send short, customized connection invites, please short. Please, please, please short. And don't do the thing where you say, let me introduce myself. Please don't do that. Okay. Word of advice. I have received many invites like this. I don't respond for a reason. And it's because you want the focus, when you're trying to connect with someone, you want the focus to be on them first. So the first thing that they see should always be, hope you're doing well, hope you and your family are doing well during this pandemic, right? I mean, just right off the bat, remember, if you were at a networking event and you walked up to someone, you wouldn't say, hi, I'm blah, 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 blah. Right? You would ask them about themselves first. And then you go into the pitch, right? So remember, it's that LinkedIn is that virtual handshake, just like if you were in a networking event. Okay, upgrade to LinkedIn Premium, please. Just do it. Spend the $30. When it comes down to getting a new salary, if you're unemployed, there's nothing compared to LinkedIn Premium, because if you don't, you won't be able to see who's viewing your profile. You won't see your LinkedIn analytics, which is showing you if people are viewing you. You could miss a chance to see a recruiter or an HR manager viewing your profile. Really, you don't want to miss out on this. Don't work for LinkedIn, but huge opportunity lost if you don't upgrade and, you know, find ways to make those connections. Right. So key takeaways from today. Right. So target your pitch as closely as possible to where you are and where you want to be. Right. So thinking through the language that I used. Okay, this is where I am. Right. I specialize in X, Y, Z. But also think about where you want to be, right? So I want to work with senior and executive level people. I have worked with them. I want to work with more, right? So do you want to work with multinational companies? Do you want to do drilling operations? Well, then highlight those things that you've done that would be appealing to that type of audience. Okay, so again, as much as I don't like using this term, you are selling yourself. You are selling the idea of you to this person. So make sure to cater, you know, your pitch to where you want to be just as much as where you are. Avoid getting too personal. Don't do it. Don't talk about your family. Everyone loves their family. We all love our family. You know, please, I worry about this right now with the pandemic, with people sharing a bit too much information. You know, people saying how many kids they have or how the pandemic has affected them. Don't include this in your pitch, please. You know, if the conversation turns that way, and feel free to talk about those things, but please don't include those in your pitch, because you invite, but some people, depending on your audience, will see this as oversharing, and they'll be less likely to want to follow up with you. So stick to your professional basics, right? Keep that brief. Aim for a clean, concise pitch to draw and keep attention. Never go overboard with details, please. I mean, you know, if you do nodule analysis, don't go into extreme detail about what you do in nodule analysis. Just use the term. They can ask if they want to, right? Research, reach out, and repeat. Again, going back to that LinkedIn push, you know, that I would push you guys to do. go off the edge. You have to research people and companies. You have to take the time to do it, and you have to keep going. Keep going, please. Everything that you're doing, you're on the right path. You just keep pushing. Trust me, things will happen. Stay calm and carry on, right? You know, this pandemic will pass, but you know, you should be able to see, as long as you start applying some of these things right now, you'll be able to look back and say, wow, 2 months ago, I had, you know, 50 connections and now I have 200. Trust me, this is what this will do, right? So if you apply these things, if you research, reach out, repeat, use that pitch, network, you will see, you know, you'll see your network grow. You know, one thing that I've started doing personally is every Sunday, I put down, just in my notes on my phone, I put down how many followers I have, you know, and the date, so that I can see, you know, how have I grown. Just looking at my data analytics isn't necessarily going to tell me that. gives that weird little graph that sometimes is jarring, and I don't really like it. But if you look and you see actually where you've grown, so for you maybe connections, you look and see, oh wow, I only had 50 connections last week and now I have 75. You're growing, right? And that just gives you that push to be like, okay, it's all right, I'm good, I can keep going, right? So yeah, I mean, so I hope this has been helpful. Yeah, feel free to reach out with questions or connect with me. Those are my details. I have the dots in between the PhD if you're trying to find me. Some people do it, some people don't. But if you're trying to search for me, that may be why you're not finding me. But yeah, open to questions. Or Jason, if you'd like to talk about, your networking experiences or anything like that.
Jason, if you could speak to your, so LinkedIn is a very powerful tool, as I've come to learn during this time. And Jason was one of the first people I noticed on LinkedIn who's writing some pretty cool things, sharing some pretty cool stuff. And so I reached out to him through LinkedIn. And so Jason, being a senior geologist and being in the same boat as us, I'd like to hear your story and kind of share it with the group.
Sure, I'm happy. I think like most of my fellow geoscientists on here, I'm still at a point in my life where I'm much more comfortable meeting everybody over a beer at a local bar or a cup of coffee in the morning somewhere. But I realized after I was laid off back in December, the power that LinkedIn was going to have. I went in, I had a resume updated, got up some work done, got myself set up, reviewed my profile a lot, and just a few little changes within 2 months got me 2 job offers. And first, I was excited. All right, good, move on, take the job offer. I had one that I was down to the final negotiation of vacation days, and then the Russians and Saudis went and did what they did, and COVID hit a week later, and those 2 job offers, of course, went away. And what I realized through all that was that those job offers came in large part because of just a few minor changes I made on LinkedIn. Of course, networking opportunities. I realized that, being from New York, I knew how bad things could potentially get, because it blew up pretty bad there real quick. And said, I have to find a way to engage. I wasn't going to be somebody who could just sit home and, watch TV or just, read papers. I had to be engaged with the community. So I came up with a little idea. And at the time, I didn't have the big network I have now, because it all came from that. But I posted a thing on LinkedIn just saying, hey guys, I recognize that the work I did on my resume and my profile got me some attention when I first got laid off. I know that resume reviews and LinkedIn profile reviews are very helpful, but that there were some things when I got back to professional resume writing that didn't quite capture our geologic backgrounds. And we have specialties. And so once you do that, why don't we trade with each other to make sure that we're still communicating our uniqueness as geologists? Because what I specialize in may not be what Samaya specializes in, or anybody else on this specializes in. So it started off as that. I had about 30, 40 people got real excited about it. And then we had a bunch of back and forths. Next thing I know, I was asked to go and lead a resume review session for a online conference over in London. And so I spent 2 days running the whole resume review and exchanging resumes with recruiters, headhunters, and fellow geoscientists. Next thing I know, I've got another 500 connections I didn't have before. And I was asked to go and write the resume section for the Petroleum Inhibitors website. And of course, that caught on big with APG and SPE. And I have another 1,000 connections I didn't have, back in March. And all of this just kept kind of coming and coming. And it became not just something that was developing on LinkedIn, but I became passionate about. By doing this and by engaging with geoscientists and recognizing that my communicating, I found a skill set I never knew I had on top of everything else. A simple post about, hey guys, let's exchange some resumes and help each other out a little bit. And stay engaged in a way that we couldn't. It's come to have this G&G transition zone, which Samaya kind of reached out a little bit on another post that I had up there that she had commented on. We now have almost 200 people. We have had, I mean, people like Amanda coming on and volunteering their time for something that is just a side effort and a volunteer effort because of, again, a simple little post that brought about what I hope now is providing opportunities for a lot of people. It's been just a passion that has developed by being engaged on LinkedIn and finding a way to communicate with my fellow geoscientists, which was what I really was after when I started this. So I think it's a little long-winded here, and I apologize. I wasn't really quite prepared for this, but I want to make the point that, as Amanda mentioned, engaging on LinkedIn and doing it in a way, especially right now where we can't go sit and exchange our resumes in person, is something that can lead to what this G&G transition zone, which is, the success of it blows my mind every single day.
Very good. Thank you, Jason. I think that's really, really kind of hit the nail on the head there. So I found similar experiences, and I've gotten to know some really cool people that way. And so I know that we have a couple of questions. Amanda, how are you looking on time? I know that you...
Good. I think I went over, so.
Are you okay with just answering a few questions
Sure.
that we have on chat? And once I ask these questions, we'll see what time we have left, but I would love for anyone else to, if they're comfortable, to ask their questions following these questions. So one of the question was, there's a question 2 parts. First, how can a specialist generalize their uniqueness enough to be relevant across a broad audience? So let's say, your PhD in, like, I don't know, shallow marine fauna or something. Mm-hmm. How do you make it so generalized enough where a broad audience can be interested in fauna and the shallow marine? And then, okay, go ahead.
Oh no, I mean, for that, it's just as simple as saying, the term geologist is very broad, right? So to say I'm a geologist is something that most people have heard before, right? So to say I'm a geologist who specializes in X, period. I mean, that's the best way to just show as simply as possible the general, right? The catchphrase that people are going to think of, okay, geologist, and then your specialization, putting those together in one sentence.
Okay. And how can a generalist make themselves unique enough among a broad audience of people with similar skills?
Yeah, I mean, think about what types of software you use. Think about what types of, how many of what have you done, right? Have you worked on, analysis for 100 wells? Have you, right? I mean, these types of numbers are eye-catching or mind-catching. I mean, however you want to describe it. Think of the data that goes along with what you've done if you're a generalist, because whenever you quantify something, people are much more likely to listen, and they're much more likely to be impressed and pay attention. So even if you're, I don't know, run-of-the-mill geologist, I don't know what that means if you're just a generalist, but think about the amount of things that you've done and then quantify those.
Okay, I think there was another question here. Would you change your 3s depending on your audience?
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see that depending on your audience. If you're going to an oil and gas, so kind of like your resume, right? I mean, you might have one 30-second pitch that's for an oil and gas industry networking type situation, and then another one that's for, people in tech, if that's what you're looking to transition to. So just think about different scenarios that you might be in, and that you would want value from. Right? Places where, if this pitch is used to get a job, then what types of situations would you be in, and how can you tailor your pitch to that specific situation?
Okay, great. And then one of the people asked, where do you put your elevator pitch on LinkedIn?
Oh, in your about section.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, in the about, that area, a lot of people end up leaving it blank, which is really unfortunate. Really fill out that section if you can. You know, if you look on my profile, you'll see in my about section how I have that framed up. And, you know, feel free to use the template that I use. I mean, you know, of course, I'm not in your industry, but feel free to use some of the phrasing, you know, that I use to help you create your own pitch. You know, using bullet points or check marks for delivered results of things that you've done is a great way to catch attention. So really, you know, use that visual aspect of breaking up content.
Great. And I think someone was asking if, I guess, if you could share the recording, or I don't know if the slides are shareable. I know this is part of your business, so.
Yeah, I'd prefer to not share my PowerPoint. I've had people steal it before.
Oh, no.
Their name on it. I'm sure none of you would do that, but I'd prefer not to. So yeah, I mean, I suppose that's up to you guys. If you'd like to share the recording, feel free to do that.
Okay, usually we put it up on the group page, which is specifically for just members. And so people can access it through there and watch it at their own leisure. And so just check that out. And a few more. Oh, okay. These are my, and then I had a couple questions myself. I have a lot of questions usually. So yeah, let's see. Bullet points. Okay, how do I? Okay, so like sometimes I have trouble with my elevator pitch because I tend to be more, or I tend to lean into being more of a listener than a talk. Like I'm not very good at talking,
Right.
Or I get kind of, and so sometimes you're with people who are a lot more talkative. How do you, how do you offset that? I guess. How do you, I guess the idea is, you kind of mentioned the elevator pitch is like you kind of want to get them interested enough where they want to ask you questions, as opposed to, a lot of people like to talk about themselves.
Well, you know, most people will ask you, I think, you know, the majority of the time when you meet someone new, you'll always get that question. So what do you do?
Yeah.
Right? What do you do for a living? And that's the perfect place to launch the pitch. You know, if they ask you what you do, rather than just saying, well, I'm a geologist, period. You know, having that pitch there is a good way to really showcase, you know, your specialization and what you do, so that people can engage with you more effectively. But I totally get it. I mean, like I said, when I first started this, I was really hopeless because I was the academic who was talking about Francophone post-colonial theory and deconstructionism and African literature. And, you know, no one knew what the heck I was talking about. I mean, it was, what the heck is Francophone? What's a Spanophone? I don't know what these terms are. So to me, it made sense to use those terms because that's what I did. But to other people, you know, like my husband, he was like, just say French. Just say French speaking, or people who speak French. Or I'm like, fine. But, you know, and the more that you practice it, the easier it'll come. And, you know, like I said, bouncing it off of people will make you feel so much more comfortable. You know, because I practiced it in front of the mirror a lot, and I realized what things felt comfortable and what didn't. And then, of course, I'd stumble over my pitch plenty of times. Still do, you know, plenty of times, which is why I'm glad it's written down. LinkedIn makes it so easy. People could just go on and see like a set pitch instead of me having to do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you're gonna stumble over it. Just don't beat yourself up about it, and just do your best to incorporate the most you can at your comfort level.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
And does anyone else, I think there was one more question that someone just asked. They said, how would you end your elevator pitch? With a question about the person or the company? You mentioned not to make it personal. I think she meant personal to yourself. I'm not sure if it's to the company.
Well, you know, in most cases when you're using your pitch, you're not going to know what company you're catering this to, because it's not a resume or a cover letter. So, you know, this is to be used in like social situations. So, you know, when you're in a meeting and they're doing around the room kind of thing, this is helpful for that. It's helpful for any kind of in-person networking, or if you're reaching out to someone through email or LinkedIn, that's what this is helpful for. But yeah, kind of tailoring it to you're going to drive yourself crazy trying to do that. Because you can't predict who's going to be listening, which is, you know, why I mentioned leaving out jargon and acronyms, because you never know who's listening. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that lends to the whole keep it broad, but like, okay, and specialize it to yourself.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that was all the questions. Does anyone else have questions for Amanda or Dr. Rico? They can, you guys can just ask. And if not, I'd like to thank Dr. Amanda Rico for coming on. And this seems like a lot of people seem to really like it, which is great. It was very useful for me because this is something I need to work on myself. And it's almost yeah, maybe you could do like a elevator pitch practice in the group page or something.
Oh man. Yeah.
Yeah.
You joke about that, Samaya, but I think that might be something really good to put on the group page, is to have everybody go and type up in a message their elevator pitch, and we can review that. That's something that we can really help each other with. I like that idea a lot.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Okay, we'll try that out. I'll put the recording on, and we'll do that kind of exercise because.
That'd be awesome. Because I mean, the more feedback you get, the better. Most people don't want to share their pitches with other people because they're embarrassed. But just get it out there. You know, even if you have 3 full paragraphs, like just put it out there, and then people can be like, yeah, maybe you don't need X, Y, Z. And that way, you don't have to sit there and knock your head against a wall doing it yourself.
Okay, cool. That was like, okay, cool. I'll put that in. Yeah. I think a lot of people look at the resume and the cover letter and things like that. But when it comes to like the social situation, especially now since we're kind of on Zoom, we just don't really do that as much. So yeah, okay, cool. We'll put that into implementation mode. And just to let people know, thank you again, Dr. Rico. We do have another, this was the 5th installment, so we'll have a 6th installment in August 3rd. So that's kind of like about 2 weeks from now, I think. Or maybe it was 1 week from now. No, oh, sorry, August 10th. Sorry, 2 weeks from now. Jason was like, oh no.
You're like, oh,
okay, so.
That's busyness coming up my way, so.
So that will be a panel discussion on health insurance, financial planning, and learning to use workforce solutions to help you navigate to a job out there. So that will be very exciting, and I look forward to seeing everyone there. So Jason, do you have anything to add?
No, Amanda, thank you very much. It's an honor to have you on here with us, and it's really just, again, it's overwhelming the amount of support we're getting from people like yourself joining our little group here. And
I'm very happy. Thank you so much for having me, guys. This was a blast. Thanks for asking.
Yeah. All right. Well, everyone have a great Monday. And again, join the GTZ Forum LinkedIn group if you want to know more about the sessions that will be coming up, as well as to catch this video and rewatch it if you want to look at her template. Everyone have a great day. Bye.
Bye.
Everybody, thank you.